When my mother passed away last spring, I thought I knew everything about my family. I was wrong. 3 days after her funeral, a lawyer I'd never met contacted me about a safety deposit box my mother had maintained for 30 years. A box I never knew existed. Inside was a stack of letters, a birth certificate that made my blood run cold, and a deed to property in a state my mother had always claimed she'd never visited. My name is Olivia Carson, and what I discovered in that box didn't just rewrite my family history, it completely shattered everything I thought I knew about who I am. The safety deposit box wasn't just hiding a family secret. It was hiding an entire family. Growing up, it was just me, Mom, and Dad in our little house in suburban Connecticut. Dad worked as an accountant, Mom taught second grade, and I was their only child, their miracle baby, they called me, after years of trying to conceive. Our life wasn't exciting, but it felt complete. Stable. Normal. Dad passed away 5 years ago from a heart attack. Mom and I grew even closer after that. She was my best friend. We spoke every day, even after I moved to Chicago for work. She knew everything about my life, my job as a graphic designer, my boyfriend troubles, my dreams and fears. Or so I thought. When Mom was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer last year, it happened so fast. 6 weeks from diagnosis to the end. On her deathbed, she seemed like she wanted to tell me something important. She kept starting sentences and stopping herself. I thought it was just the medication making her confused. The blue key, she finally whispered to me the night before she died. Remember the blue key? I had no idea what she was talking about. I assumed it was the morphine talking. Then came the call from Mr. Harrington, an attorney from a firm I'd never heard of. Your mother has arranged for you to receive the contents of a safety deposit box, he explained. She was very specific that you were to be notified only after her passing. When I arrived at the bank, Mr. Harrington handed me a small blue key. The safety deposit box was in a bank across town from where Mom had always done her banking. The clerk led me to a private room where I sat alone, staring at the metal box. Inside were several bundles of letters tied with faded ribbon, a manila envelope, a smaller box, and a photograph of my mother, much younger than I'd ever seen her, holding a baby that wasn't me. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was a birth certificate for a girl named Emily Carson, born 3 years before me. My mother was listed as the mother. But the father wasn't my dad. The name listed was James Whitaker. I'd never heard this name in my life. The small box contained a wedding ring that wasn't my mother's, at least not the one she'd always worn, and a key to a house with an address in Asheville, North Carolina. A state my mother had always claimed held no interest for her. Then I began reading the letters. They were correspondence between my mother and this James Whitaker, spanning years. The first ones were passionate love letters. Later ones discussed their daughter, Emily, and arrangements for visits. Some letters were angry. Some were heartbroken. The final letter, dated just before my birth, contained just 4 lines. I can't do this anymore, Sarah. I've made my choice. Please don't contact me again. Take care of our daughter. There was a check enclosed with that letter for $25,000. The memo line read simply, Final. My mind was reeling. Who was Emily? Who was James Whitaker? Why had my mother kept all of this secret? And most importantly, what did this mean about my father? The man who had raised me, loved me, and never once hinted that our family held such secrets? I called in sick to work and began my investigation immediately. First, I searched for James Whitaker online. Too many results, too generic a name. I tried adding Asheville, North Carolina. Still too many options. I dug deeper into the letters, looking for clues. In one, he mentioned working at the university. Another referenced his department. Biology. A search for James Whitaker Biology Professor Asheville brought up an old faculty page for Western Carolina University. There he was, younger, with a full head of dark hair, but unmistakably the man from the photo. The page was archived, last updated in 2005. I found his obituary next. James Whitaker had died 3 years ago from complications following a stroke. He was survived by his wife of 40 years, Margaret, and their children, Thomas and Emily. Emily, the same name on that birth certificate. I stared at my computer screen, my coffee growing cold beside me. I had a half-sister out there. Possibly a half-brother too, if Thomas was also my mother's child. And this Margaret woman, had she known about my mother? About me? The deed in the safety deposit box was for a small cabin outside Asheville. Property records showed it had been purchased jointly by Sarah Carson, my mother, and James Whitaker, 32 years ago. It had never been sold. What was this place? A love nest? A meeting spot? A home they had once planned to share? I booked a flight to Asheville for the following morning. The cabin was deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains, at the end of a winding gravel road. It looked abandoned, with overgrown weeds and a sagging porch. But someone had been maintaining it minimally. The windows were intact, the roof appeared solid. The key from the box fit perfectly in the lock. Inside, it was like stepping into a time capsule. Furniture from the late 80s. Faded curtains. A layer of dust covered everything, but beneath that, I could see signs of a life once lived here. Books on shelves. Kitchen utensils hanging on hooks. A crib in one of the bedrooms. On the mantel were more photographs. My mother, looking young and carefree in a way I'd never seen her. The man from the obituary, James, and a toddler who must have been Emily. They looked happy. They looked like a family. In the back of a drawer, I found a journal. My mother's handwriting filled its pages. I sat on the dusty couch and began to read. The truth, their truth, spilled out across those pages. My mother had been a graduate student when she met James, a brilliant young biology professor already married to Margaret. Their affair had been intense, all-consuming. When my mother became pregnant with Emily, James had promised to leave his wife. But when the time came, he couldn't do it. They reached a compromise. James would stay with his family in town. My mother would live in this cabin with Emily. He would visit, support them, be a father to his daughter. It was an arrangement born of desperation and love, messy, complicated love. It worked for a few years, until Margaret discovered everything. The journal entries became darker. Threats of exposure. Custody battles. My mother's desperate fear of losing Emily. Then, a solution presented itself. Margaret couldn't have more children. She wanted Emily. James wanted peace. They offered my mother a choice: surrender Emily to them to raise as their own, with generous visitation rights and financial support, or face a scorched earth legal battle that would destroy all their lives and careers. Heartbroken, my mother agreed. But the visits became too painful. Seeing her daughter calling another woman Mommy was unbearable. She moved away. Met my father. Had me. The final pages of the journal detailed her guilt, her grief, her promise to herself never to tell my father the truth about her past, and her vow that someday, when the time was right, she would tell me about my half-sister. But she never did. I found Emily Whitaker on social media that night from my hotel room. She looked like me. Same eyes, same smile. She was a doctor in Charlotte, married with 2 children of her own. My niece and nephew, I realized with a shock. I sent her a message. Simple. Direct. My name is Olivia Carson. Sarah was my mother. I believe we're sisters. I'd like to talk if you're willing. 3 agonizing hours later, her reply came. I've been waiting for this message my entire life. Call me. Our phone conversation lasted until sunrise. Emily had always known she was adopted by Margaret, technically her stepmother. James had told her the truth when she was a teenager. She had even met our mother a few times as a very young child, though she remembered her only vaguely as Daddy's friend Sarah. Emily had searched for our mother years ago, but respected her apparent wish for privacy when her letters went unanswered. What she didn't know was that those letters had been intercepted by James, who had kept them from my mother to protect everyone involved. Did you know about me? I asked her. No, Emily said. Dad never mentioned your mother had another child. I don't think he knew. We agreed to meet the next day at a cafe in Charlotte. When I saw her walk in, it was like seeing a version of myself, but with subtle differences. Her hair was lighter than mine. She was taller. But we had the same walk, the same way of tilting our heads when we were thinking. We hugged like we'd known each other all our lives. Over coffee that turned into lunch, that turned into dinner, we pieced together the complete picture of our shared history. The secrets, the lies, the complex web of love and betrayal that had connected and separated our families for decades. "I have something for you," Emily said, reaching into her bag. She pulled out a small wooden box. "Dad gave this to me before he died. He said if I ever found Sarah or her family, I should share it." Inside were dozens of photographs. Me as a baby, me at my high school graduation, me at college. James had been keeping tabs on my life from afar. My mother had been sending him pictures of me all along. They had never truly let each other go. That was 8 months ago. Since then, Emily and I have become inseparable. She introduced me to her children, my 9-year-old niece and 7-year-old nephew, who were thrilled to suddenly have a new aunt. I've even met Margaret, who welcomed me with an openness I never expected, given our complicated history. "I made peace with the past long ago," she told me. "James loved both your mother and me in different ways. Life is rarely as simple as we want it to be." Together, Emily and I decided what to do with the cabin. We renovated it, keeping the structure but updating everything else. Now it's our shared retreat, a place where our blended family can gather and create new memories to replace the painful ones. Last month, we scattered our mother's ashes from the cabin's porch, looking out over the mountains she once loved. Emily stood beside me, holding my hand as we said goodbye to the woman who had loved us both, in her complicated, imperfect way. I've come to understand that my mother wasn't a villain in this story, nor was she a saint. She was a human being who made difficult choices in impossible situations. She loved fiercely. She protected secrets. She carried guilt. She did the best she could. And in the end, through that blue key and that safety deposit box, she found a way to give me back the sister I never knew I had lost. Some family secrets destroy, but this one, painful as it was to discover, ultimately healed wounds I hadn't even known existed. Sometimes the truth, even when it hurts, is the greatest inheritance a parent can leave behind. If this story touched you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life stories. Have you ever discovered a family secret that changed everything? Share your experience in the comments below. Special thanks to my incredible supporters on Patreon who make these videos possible. Check out the link in the description to join our storytelling community. And remember, sometimes the families we discover are just as important as the ones we're born into.